Evening, folks. Welcome to Trashmen. We're going to do something a little different this time. Once again, I'm Jimbo. I'm here with Jamie, as always.
Yep.
And what we thought we would do this morning, it's I should say that it's March 24th, 2019, that we're recording this. And the reason we're doing something a little different is because this morning, we got news. That Larry Cohen had passed away at the age of 77. And Jamie had sent me a text and said, "Hey, we should probably just do a quick little podcast, little video, just to talk about his career, talk about some of the things we'd seen, what we like, what's inspired us, and so here we are. It's gonna be rough. It's not gonna be one of our more polished videos. Not that our videos are necessarily polished. You'll probably have my wife walking around the background, microwaving a muffin or something. I don't know, whatever the hell she does. But we're just gonna roll with it. If Jamie's internet cuts out, we're just gonna roll with that too.
Yeah, my internet's not doing so good today.
So we're just gonna go with it, and we're gonna talk about Larry Cohen, what we know about him, his life, his legacy, and maybe a few of you will watch this and go seek out his work because you should.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
With that, Jamie, if you want to kick us off, and why don't you
Yeah.
why don't you start with telling me about the first Larry Cohen movie that you saw, written
Oh,
or directed? Which one did you know? What was the one where you first knew that you were watching a Larry Cohen movie and had caught your attention?
I would. It's probably. Oh God, there's a couple actually. It would probably either go The Stuff
Hmm.
or Maniac Cop. Now, however, Maniac Cop was produced and written by Larry Cohen, and he actually did all the sequels as well. He didn't direct those; that was directed by Bill Lustig. Um, but I still could, at times, I forget that Bill Lustig directed that, and I always think it's a Larry Cohen film because of that style that Larry Cohen would bring between comedy and exploitation, either action, horror, science fiction, whatnot. The Stuff is definitely up there. That's a childhood movie for me. I remember seeing that movie for the first time I saw it as a kid. I didn't like it because I wanted to see basically the Blob,
Hmm.
and I thought that's what it was, and I didn't know. I was like, "What is this?" At the time, I didn't know what satire was, but I was like, it's a satire look at basically food and what we eat and what we consume, product placement, that sort of thing. And I didn't realize that at the time. I just wanted a gory horror film.
Right. Right.
Um, and then probably the next one would be It's Alive.
Hmm.
I will throw down and say It's Alive's a fucking great movie. It is a great fucking movie. And Larry Cohen also did It Lives Again, the sequel in the 70s. And then took him a while to make a third one. And he did It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive, which was a deal that he did with the producers to do Return to Salem's Lot. So he shot Return to Salem's Lot. He also did It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive at the same time. So he used the whole cast and crew from both films. And he also used his protege, Michael Moriarty,
Right.
who's just a great actor.
Larry Cohen's one of those directors that I think in the last 2 years or so has kind of finally gotten a little more recognition.
Yes.
The King Cohen documentary obviously does a lot to kind of solidify his place in kind of film history. Obviously, a lot of genre fans, and even some big names, like Martin Scorsese and Joe Dante and these directors, I think always knew about his work. I think only in more recent years people are taking it a bit more seriously. And I don't mean to say that you need to take the Stuff and It's Alive seriously, and like sit down and say like, oh, you shouldn't have fun, or it's meant to be, a serious movie that we need to take seriously. That's not what I'm saying at all. They're meant to be
Right.
fun, but I think people are finally in the last 2-3 years have kind of acknowledged that the guy was really quite talented. He wasn't just some schlock filmmaker, trying to make a quick buck. Which obviously he's a businessman too. He made money doing this as well. So
Yeah, right.
so
He's a great producer, producing good stuff.
yeah, and I mean, in I think what helps him too is above anything else, it's clear that he's a writer first. You know, in preparation for this recording, I actually watched the King Cohen documentary today,
How did
and
you like it? That's the one I want to watch so
it
bad.
was good. It was good. So if I were to give my sort of pseudo review on it, I would probably give it 3.5 cans. If I was being generous, I'd give it 4. The only reason being is that it's and this isn't a criticism. It's just a very good on the surface kind of documentary, and it goes kind of chronologically from his early years as a writer through pretty much all of his films, and they may even touch on all of his films. I can't remember, at least the ones he directed,
Okay.
up
They
until
touched upon his black exploitation films like Bone,
yep.
Hell Up in Harlem, Black Caesar, and all that.
Yeah, so they touch on all of that. So
Okay,
that's
good,
what I mean.
good.
But none of them they go into like real in-depth stuff, right? So that's why I'm kind of in the 3.5 territory. It's really good documentary, and it's a very good introduction, especially for people who haven't really still been introduced to Larry Cohen. It would be kind of a perfect companion documentary for if they ever made like a Larry Cohen box set, where they put everything together, and this was sort of like the documentary that went with the Blu-ray set or something. It would be kind of
Right.
the perfect thing for that. As a standalone movie, it's good. There was nothing in it that blew me away, but I'm trying not to be biased because I do know a little bit about my Larry Cohen history too, right? So I think for the film fan that doesn't know much about it might actually enjoy it a little bit more than I did. Some of it felt a little bit rinse and repeat because you've seen some of these interviews and you've seen some of this stuff in like the stuff Blu-rays or the It's Alive Blu-rays or any of the other supplemental material from other movies, right? So, but it's really good. I do highly recommend it, even if I just kind of give it a 3.5, 4 can rating. So, but definitely worth checking out. You can find it on Shudder currently if you're a subscriber there. You can buy it or rent it from all of your major streaming services, and of course, it's on Blu-ray.
Did they talk about like the episode of Masters of Horror that he
They
directed
do,
offhand?
yeah. They even go into that as well. The Pick Me Up episode. So, which is one of that may be the last thing he directed, actually, wasn't it?
It was the last thing he directed.
Okay.
It was the what was it called, the pickup or something like
Yeah,
that.
Pick Me Up is what the
Okay.
episode was called, and of course it has Michael Moriarty once again, and that is a truck driver, and yeah, I mean it's a good episode. It's one of my, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of the better ones from season one, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It is one of the better ones.
So the documentary is funny because it talks about how nervous he was because he hadn't been directed in a while and he was kind of nervous to come back, but obviously he did just fine. His gift and I think his talent was really to come up with like these concepts,
Right.
and so he's probably just got notes and scripts of all sorts of interesting ideas of things that if the family ever sold any of that stuff, the spec scripts, there's probably maybe even dozens if not hundreds of possible stories sitting in
Oh,
his home office. You never know, right?
yeah.
It's kind of like how Stephen King can like crank out
Right.
a book. He can kind of crank out a script and a story. That was one of his greatest talents, and I think that's what helped him as a producer and as a director, because he's maybe not the best director, but what about him, from his filmography, really is kind of like those high concept, strange ideas that he did, like Q, another one where it's about a giant.
Hugh the Winged Serpent. Yeah, that's a strange one too. It's
Mhm.
good though. Got David Carradine in it. Yeah, Michael Moriarty. It's very well made movie.
Yeah. What was I going to say? The documentary did cover some of his latter stuff that I never saw. So I never saw movies like Phone Booth that he wrote, the Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, he just wrote that one, and that was a big one for him. That got him back on the map for a while.
You know,
He did that. Then he wrote Cellular, and then he wrote oh, what the hell is that one movie? They cut. It was kind of like one of those torture porn ones when Saw and Hostel was real big. Captivity, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
I did see it, and the movie is garbage. It's crap.
Well, I mean, he's written a ton of stuff, and so
Right.
like one of what was Bill Lustig's last directorial movie, Uncle Sam?
Oh, Uncle Sam. I think it was Uncle Sam, which Larry Cohen did right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a number of things that
Yeah, Uncle Sam.
he's got his hands in that that may not be the best movie, but again, it shows how much impact he really kind of did have in kind of independent film
Right.
and all of that. So one of the interesting things about him as a director is in the King Cohen documentary, they talk about how he is the master, or how he was the master of stealing a shot, stealing a scene. Running and gunning in New York City, putting his actor like in the middle of people and just like go and pretty crazy stuff you couldn't get away with today, right? Like
Right.
people walking in the middle of downtown traffic in New York, and someone dressed as a police officer walking up and shooting someone, and then running off or whatever, and then the actor there like writhing around on the ground or whatever. And in today, with the fear of terrorism and everything,
Yeah, it's tough
you would get
now.
your ass beat, and
Right.
arrested. But they talk
He did
about.
that. I think he did that in God Told Me To. I
Mhm.
think he did a bunch of that, actually, running around shooting police officers and running away and
Well, I mean,
stuff.
they talk about it in pretty. It sounds like nearly every single one of his earlier movies. They do that in some way, shape, or form. Fred Williamson's talking about even in his movies. Running through an airport, and Larry's like, "Oh, just run up the baggage claim ramp," and they go running up there, and they're like, "Oh, that looks great. Okay, now let's fight over here," and people are just kind of like standing back, like, "What the fuck's going on?" And that makes for great stories. But I had a thought when I was watching it about how completely irresponsible all of that
Right.
is, and how absolutely lucky he is, because it's funny to talk about it now because no one got hurt. But imagine if someone did get hurt, and how different his life would have been if someone had gotten hit by a
Right.
car, or if someone had uh, you know died. One of the stories they're talking about is when they were shooting Q, the winged serpent. Was they were shooting all this machine gun fire at the top of what building was the top of it? Was it the Chrysler building? They don't have permits. No one knows they're doing it. The cops are going crazy. Not only that, but like the machine gun blank casings are falling off the side of the building. I mean, just imagine if one of those had gone through someone's skull. His entire career would have been changed forever, right? And so, we talk
Right.
about it now and sort of laugh about it, but at I think about it and I'm just like, how absolutely reckless, that is.
Right. That's pretty ballsy.
So, even though we can kind of laugh about it now, I'm also kind of like, that's not something to emulate either. So that's the one thing. That's the one thing when I think about how he directed films and his body of work. I'm like, that's not something we should probably emulate as a top quality of of his.
Well, you got to remember, he's also a producer,
Right.
so he's probably thinking, "Oh, I can save money on permits right
Oh,
now by just, you know,
absolutely.
just run over and shoot this."
The one thing I do appreciate about him is that independent spirit. When I do watch his interviews, when I do watch his movies, I do get a sense of like, what is stopping an independent filmmaker from making your movie, except yourself? I mean, he definitely has kind of that inspirational story that it's like, what, if your resources are limited, write that script, start shooting scenes, just get it done. Yeah, there's going to be obstacles
Yeah,
in the way, but at the same time, it's like find creative solutions. Work through it. One of the funnier things they talk about in some of the interviews I've seen with him is how he, especially in his earlier work, never planned anything. How he would just get on set and just start working, and that confused some people because they were used to like all this pre-planning. But Cohen was always like, why plan for it? Everything's going to change anyways, so why the hell would I even spend the time planning for it when we're just going to change everything anyways? I never met him. I know you did. I know you met him, you got his autograph, but I never met him, so I can only kind of guess. But he always struck me from his interviews as a guy who was very interested in doing things his way, in his concept, but he could get bored with something very easily. So like he wouldn't be the kind of writer that would ever stick around long enough for like a TV series. He might like the idea of developing a TV show and kind of letting it go, but then would want to go do something else. He never.
Which is funny because he started with TV though.
No.
He started with the TV series The Invaders in the '60s, and I think that was just a couple seasons, but that's the one that got him through the door. But he never did go back to doing another series. That was his claim to fame. Then he went on, and I think he started writing for some westerns. I know he did Return of the Magnificent Seven and so forth, and then he got into It's Alive, and from there it kind of took off.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's you're right, because you can see that it's almost like a little bit ADD, maybe just a touch. That I could see that him getting bored. And then here it is, the autograph of It Lives Again, It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive, which I was just watching, and I was talking to our friend Sean, and he said he never saw It's Alive 3, and I'm like, yeah, Sean, it's not that good. I was like, it's a little too 80s. It doesn't have that spirit from the 70s as the other two. Watch it again. I'm like, well, I might take back what I said. I think It's Alive 3 is actually a pretty fun, decent movie. It's got a great cast, too. You got Garrett Graham is in it. It's like a lot of his same actors he always uses. And the effects are decent makeup effects, and it's gory as shit. So, and you get to see these little babies now becoming teenagers, and you know how that goes. It's just more insanity and more violent. It's a decent flick. It's definitely worth checking out. I actually have a text here. I was talking to our buddy Nick today, and we were discussing how we met Larry Cohen before, about 10, 12 years ago, and it was for a writing course at my buddy John's store, Horribles, and we were talking about it, and Nick wrote here, he says that he tried to follow a template for what Larry Cohen was talking to us. He tried to follow that same template for his script, and it worked. He said, basically, simple idea, make each scene about one thing and get into the story as quick as possible. And if you watch Larry Cohen films, that's exactly what it is. You know the story, you know exactly what you're getting into right from the get-go.
Right.
And that's what makes his film so unique and fun and interesting. You don't get bored watching his movie. At least I don't.
Right.
None of his films will ever feel boring or dull. Let's I'd love to talk to you about the Maniac Cop movies, Jim.
Sure.
Since you and I are fans of the series, I got my Blu-rays right here, all signed by Bill Lustig. Nice. Right here. The Maniac Cop films, I think, are absolutely awesome. Big fan of the series, and supposedly, what Larry Cohen and Bill Lustig are, good friends, and supposedly they're trying to come up with an idea, a treatment for a movie, and as a joke, I believe it was Larry Cohen that said, he goes, how about a movie where the cop is insane, and he says something like, and the tagline could be, you have the right to remain silent forever. And they just started laughing and thought it was great. And they're like, wait a minute, let's write this. So the Maniac Cop series is a great. Check out this cast. This cast rules. All right, ready? So you got starring role Bruce Campbell. You got Tom Atkins. You got Richard Roundtree. You got Lorraine Landon. William Smith. I mean, this cat, Robert Zadar, of course, late Robert Zadar, and directed by Bill Lustig, who's just coming off of Maniac Cop and Vigilante, and then you got Larry Cohen. Right there, you're like, okay, this is going to be awesome, and it's one of those movies where you're like, yeah, it's awesome. It's action-packed. It's violent. It's scary. First time I ever saw it was HBO late at night. I just got done watching Return of the Living Dead for the first time, and it was right back to back was Return of the Living Dead and Maniac Cop, which, oh my god, can you imagine if HBO still did shit like that?
No.
All right, going back, Maniac Cop 2. Okay, so Maniac Cop 2 has got the most badass scene, and it is completely ripped off from the Terminator, but when you're watching it, you don't give a shit because it's awesome. It's a scene where the cop walks into a police station and just starts wasting everyone with all these guns. It is so action-packed and awesome the way it was directed by Bill Lustig. And it's such a cool scene. You also got in that movie Robert Davi. You got Bruce Campbell coming back, Michael Lerner, again, Laurie Landon, Robert Z'Dar, Clarence William III, Leo Rossi. It's an awesome flick. Definitely worth checking out. Not to mention, I got to bring this up. It does have the Maniac Cop rap song at the end. So goddamn early 90s. It's terrible fucking song. I don't know what they were thinking of, but it's still hilarious to me. Rounding it out is Maniac Cop 3, Badge of Silence. And I think the less said about Badge of Silence, the better. But it does have a pretty awesome... if you're into stunts, you like stunt work, it's got a really cool stunt at the end of a guy on fire for like 20 minutes. This guy is constantly on fire, and it's a car chase. So, in hindsight, it's actually pretty badass. So it's worth checking out just for that. He did an awesome blaxploitation film that is so it's overlooked in his filmography, and that is Original Gangstas.
Oh yeah.
It's a stupid title. It is a dumb title.
And one of the few that he didn't write and direct.
Yeah, I think he just directed that, correct?
Right. Yeah. He did a little writing to kind of clean up the script a little bit, but he didn't take film credit for it. But anyways, go on with your rant. I don't mean to cut you off.
I saw that in the theater on opening day, and I was dying to see this movie. And it was the same day the movie Twister opened up. And I clearly remember finishing a final. It's May. Finishing a final and going to the movie theater on my own, by myself, to see Original Gangstas, because I knew no one wanted to see this movie, and it tanked. It was bombed. Right. But it's a really good movie. It's an awesome movie. You got Robert Forster's in it. You got Pam Grier, Fred Williamson, Richard Roundtree, Ron O'Neill's in it. I mean, it's awesome. It's a great movie.
Shot in Gary, Indiana, too.
Yes. It's also got Wheezy from the Jeffersons in it. Paul Williams. It's an awesome movie. It's got a lot of action and everything, but I really dug it, and I made sure I came back home after that movie, and a couple hours later, I went with all my friends to see Twister. You know what? Original Gangstas is 10 times better than that piece of shit Twister.
Right. But that goes with what I said. There's a varied filmography there, right? So it's right. I kind of throw out the question of like, where do you start? But there's so many different things you could start with.
Yeah. I'm going for horror. I'd go It's Alive.
I think my personal favorite's This Stuff. I think that's my personal favorite.
Nice. Okay, it's a good one.
It's just it's funny. It's goofy. It's strange.
Larry Cohen, rest in peace, man. You were awesome. I'm glad I got a chance to meet you. And I still remember shaking his hand and getting a picture with it. And he goes, "What is this? A film deal?" Or something like that. He said something like, "What, are we making a deal here?" Just an all-around good guy. He was cool. So.
You better watch out when you hear that sound. It means that the maniac cop's around. Once upon a time, he was a super cop, but the bad guys strangled to make him stop. They put him in prison where they tried to kill him, but he broke out, now he's the villain. Bullets won't hurt him. I know it sounds like jive, but we're not sure if he's dead or alive.
Ugh, it smells like Trashmen media around here.